I do the 5x7s because it's quick to do within a class time. These are good sizes. As you get going, or even what Andy is doing, and even these smaller, these are what, 4x5, 4x,
It was half a half.
4x6, something like
Quarter
that.
of the sheet.
Nice. You can do them quickly, you can practice quickly, it doesn't really matter, but as you get going, start using larger sheets. And as you use larger paper, do use your larger brushes as much as possible. I don't, look, I organized my stuff. I went through my box. I had 2 of these. I'm like, what am I doing with these 2 palettes? And I think I know what happened, but I offered it to my grandson, but his mom doesn't think it's time. So I tried to save what really works for me. This is my nice big brush if I'm working large size. This one back 25 years ago probably cost $60.
Wow.
You know, but it's, so that's why it's in the little plastic bag. I take good care of this. And I have a number of the variety. Here's a very nice, I need a piece of paper to show. A nice rigger brush. Rigger is just with the tiny details, you know, the tiny points on it.
That's a nice one. Can I see that?
Yeah. But if you're using, like for a fence or something, you can use the edge of this, or like we did with the credit card. That works as well. I also have some smaller brushes here. These are for windows in houses. You know, just a little, all I have to do is like a little 1 stroke or something. Couple angled brushes for different things. But if you're doing windows, again, even if it's a small brush stroke, don't let it stay flat one color. If you think about a window on a house, right, it'll be darker at the top because of the shadow falling down, and then it starts reflecting light at the bottom. So go ahead and put a nice little, like if you use this for a window, I'm going to go right into this printed paper here. Right, that's not enough paint, obviously. But if that were my window, it's just kind of flat. So I would take this and just blot slightly, which is not going to work on this paper, to add variety. Right? Does that make sense? So it's not a flat mark. See how well prepared I am for this demonstration?
We're impressed. It worked.
Yeah. Color. So, tape we reviewed. Anybody have some paintings, besides Andy, because we'll share Andy's, that you worked on that you want to check or talk about or have some feedback on? I'm not mean.
This one because
Can I hold it?
yes, it was my new paint and my new paper.
Okay.
I didn't bring them. It's too
What
big.
kind of paper is it?
That's called Bockford, which I'll show you.
Bockingford block. This is one I haven't heard of. Let me get rid of this.
St. Cuthbert's Mill from the UK.
Oh,
So it's a block, so you have to use the knifey thing. You know what I used to get it out? An original fuller brush letter opener. Well, it has a
an
picture.
antique.
It has a picture of the fuller brush man on it. Anyway,
Oh my goodness.
that's the people. That's this paint.
I always thought, I usually have a
So
palette
it
knife
doesn't
in
save the
mine.
weight of this here.
Yes,
I
it's
have no palette knife in mine.
140.
But yeah, if you get a block, you need to find that place where it opens and slip something in. Again, as you slip it in, try to go at your 45-degree angle. If you go this way, I mean, there's been many times I've ripped the paper. For some reason, that just seems to work better. Cuts it out. Excellent. You put what? What did I do?
Oh, it's underneath.
Oh, I hit it, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm curious for what you have to say because I used different paper, different paints, a different brain.
Oh,
You can rent brains?
Yeah, I need one. My different, my different brain had to do with your lessons and watching the videos, yours, and looking at these pictures of these trees. And there was another one, another handout. Oh no, it was this one on the bottom.
Oh, this one in the bottom that I
Yeah.
found. I mean, it was a design, but I thought that was nice, kind of to show different
And you had mentioned
silhouettes.
that you can also add color to it. And so
yeah.
I was a little stumped with that, so I just stuck with the first one that came out on my brush, which was the brown.
The brown.
And it was just so pretty. It was like,
This came out so
it was like
nicely. That
suede.
wash is gorgeous. Yeah.
You know, the paint was just
And it is,
delicious.
it's good to be practicing like this. You can see in this little photo I have that your aerial perspective, which we'll work with today, is not your linear perspective. Linear perspective is if you're standing at a railroad track and it goes back, or beside a house and it seems to go off to the sides. That's a drawing thing, so that's what the drawing class will be for. But aerial perspective has to do how things lose contrast and intensity as you go further into the distance, which is why mountains is great. Because even though, like these trees that are close up, they're more intense, there's more contrast. As they go to the distance, say these two trees may be the same type of tree, but because that one's in the distance, it's less contrasty, and softer, and often sometimes a little bit more blue because of the way that haze refracts light. It gives it a more of a bluish haze.
I never added any blue.
No?
I used just the water to
lighten
make
it.
it lighter.
Yeah.
But then the tree in the middle with the leaves, I said, all right, enough brown. I had to do something.
Add something, and you just kind of dotted it in.
I did, because the tree was a failure. And I had to fix it, and I tried.
Where
and
these
it wasn't
trees
working.
that you've done, I'm going to hand these around. There's masses, and she still has the sky holes showing through on these, which I think is really nice. So if you had kind of done one of these or this more to this, it would have worked better. Now with this brown, you could still paint on top of that if you want.
I think I went back the
like
next
this
day
one.
to put those leaves in, just because that tree was such a failure.
Yeah. It's interesting. Never a failure. It's always a learning
Yes,
experience.
that's what it was.
That's what it is.
I have a question.
Yes.
What do you paint first? You paint the foreground first, the darker trees, and then go to the background?
No.
Opposite.
Yeah. You work background and light up to the dark. If you were working in other media, say acrylic, oil, or pastel, not exactly, but it's often the opposite way. You work like medium and dark tones, and then you come up to your lights. Watercolor, you need to leave the lights. If you don't leave it light, you're going to lose that luminosity that's so nice about watercolor. So that's one of the first things we'll do today is practice one of these mountains, just to so you can get a feeling of that, and we'll hope that it works.
And I did draw a little first. I
You
used
did
the
draw.
pencil.
No, but I mean, the shapes of the trees, this one has a very nice shape. It's irregular. Nature is always irregular. If we get too regular, and this one's still a little irregular, which is nice. Looks like, like one of those artificial Christmas trees or something, and you don't want that. And Andy also practiced with some salt, and she said I could pass these around just so you can see. She did a comparison of the plastic wrap and the bubble wrap. So she played with that, which is fun. I'm going to hand this around. This is one of just my little sketch I think I showed you before, but this is with my flat brush, this one almost exclusively, just picking up paint right and twisting it to get as few strokes possible to bring out what I want. This one came across this way and then twisted off and lifted. Here a little fatter, twist and lift.
So you didn't draw any of that, right? That was just brush stroke.
I did not draw any of this. Yeah.
And it wasn't a double loaded brush, was it?
It wasn't at first. I started with a lighter green. It was a little more water here. I brought in that other bluish green that God knows I'd mixed over there
Right.
somehow. I did at the very end use a detail brush to add in a few lines here and there. Waited for this area to totally dry before I, put the eye in, because otherwise we know what happens.
Yes.
It bleeds. And then the bubbles were fun with the
End of something?
yeah, the end of that other, this brush just happens to be have a hollow handle. So I would, I would stamp. I would try to pick up enough paint and then just kind of stamp it. Whoopsie, that was too much. It was too wet. But you can just kind of twist it on there and make bubbles.
Yeah.
So sometimes look for other tools that you have around. You never know what. Bubble wrap, end of a handle, toothbrush. Did we spatter with toothbrush?
Yeah.
Is it okay if we take a picture of that fish? So I can try it?
Yes, yes. Just don't sell it online as yours.
No one would believe it.
Did you sign it?
It's a miracle.
So I'm gonna pass these around.
Now, for the eyes, did you?
That was, no, I could have used the brush on that. Was the brush handle.
No, I mean the white part of the eye.
I left
You-
light. I left it light. So again, watercolor, you really have to think. You have to
Yeah,
plan
that's the
ahead.
problem. You have
And you have to leave areas. Just leave areas. I started this earlier because I wanted to use some plastic wrap.
I know.
That's for later.
This would make a good
All right.
skin for something, right?
We have some paper ready.
Mm-hmm.
Start with something simple with a mountain. I am going to start with this one because this one has fog.
Yeah.
That's going to be a little different. When you're dealing with softness of fog and stuff like that, better paper works better. But also, it's a gamble whether it's going to come out nicely or not. But there are some tricks to help you get there. If that makes sense.
Caroline,
Yes.
can I borrow your, well, not borrow,
Yes.
but could I use?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't give it back.
I know. I remember when I was senior year in high school, we were in England, one of those student trips, and you go in the bathroom and the toilet paper is there. And on every little square it said, property of the Queen of England, property of the Queen of... I'm like, do we return this when we're done?
Reminds me, can you hand my tape back? So I don't go home? I just bought it. I don't know what.
Yeah, we'll try to keep track of who has what. So, what we do, now I have to shift this forward. I'm working in a very tight space here. And I'm impeding on other people's space.
I can move anything
No,
you need me to.
no, you are fine. That was me. I grab my two big brushes. I have my reference photo, which I'm going to look at loosely. I'm not going to pay a lot of attention. Can you see okay? If you can't, you can come up a little closer. Plus, am I recording? I think I'm recording.
I'm gonna move up
I'm going to
there.
break it. Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Right. So for a very easy gray, what you want to do is mix your complementary colors to get gray. You could use black and you could put more water in it, but it's not an interesting gray. It's kind of a flat gray. More interesting is mixing any two of your complementary colors, and we talked about that. Everybody good on complements? What's opposite on the color wheel? My favorite for a nice
I will
gray.
sacrifice this
will be-
to you.
Oh no.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you.
To show. I want to see too.
Is ultramarine blue, which is, I don't know, in that area, any kind of blue. So I bring that out in the middle. See, my ultramarine is grainy still. I haven't decided why that is. And a hint of burnt umber. Now I went from blue to that because they're basically the same in tonal value. I would not go from this blue over to this yellow. I'd clean my brush very well. But I can and it's wet right there, so I know it's not going to leave paint in there. It's going to pick up paint. So see if adding a little more of that brown, because brown is in, I've got the blue and brown is in the orange family. Even though it's a shade of orange, which means it's darker. But that's a pretty nice gray right there. What if we did a couple others? What if we did a reddish? This I am going to clean.
You can swipe if you want.
Well, I've got my sponge, but thank you.
didn't see it there.
And the opposite was the complement?
Green.
A green, right? So this is the only green I have. But I'm going to pick up this green because why not? It's already there. Maybe bring the red into the green. Green into the red. Still needs more green. I don't think this is going to be a gray. Because this is not the best green. But you can see sometimes right on your palette, that is still kind of green. But it's a nice olive green. It's not gray. So that's what your mixing charts are for when you've practiced and you've kept track. So you see, but look how nice a gray that is. And it's the blue and the burnt umber, which is really nice.
Ultramarine blue and burnt umber.
Those are my two favorite, yeah.
That's pretty.
Now, interesting, when mixing skin tones, I have kind of a go-to as well, but we're not going to deal with skin tones right now.
Sounds hard.
Yeah. In watercolor, figures are probably the hardest thing to do. Well, they're tricky anyway. You really need to know drawing skills. You need to understand proportions and relationships of different parts of the body and how three-dimensional form works. It's complex. I mean, when I'm doing it now, and you can see me on my YouTube or stuff, you know, just doing quick, all that thinking is still behind me, even though it looks like I'm just doing lines and something quick. I'm always thinking the form and even what's around the other side. And I talk about X-ray vision, you know. You have to know what's happening behind as well. A friend of mine just did one of a beautiful dancer and her arm's way up, but her arm is like half again as long as it should be. But it was a very nice drawing. But that's tricky. Figures are tricky.
Proportion and scale.
But if you can do a figure, yeah, you learn so much. And you can apply that to any other thing you're doing. You know, once you enter, I had a college professor, he says, just do the figure like you're doing a landscape. I'm like, oh, he's like hills and valleys, which was simplification a lot. But, all right, so I'm going to do, this is kind of a nice day. So I need a mixing area.
Can I throw a little quickie in?
Yes, please.
Which I discovered doing ceramic mosaics. The fish, the leaf, and a bird are all the same shape.
Fish, leaf,
They're all spears.
bird. Yes. So, and what do we use for that? We use these, right? These brushes, because you can,
Birds. One has a beak.
tip down, tip, I don't have enough paint. Now, as I'm mixing this, I'm also turning my brush in my hand this way. Do you see? So I'm kind of mixing it around, but I'm also turning the brush because that's loading the brush equally on all sides. Then you can bring it around, lift up. I did this the other day, right? So there's a little bird, and then of course we practiced leaves or petals. And what was the other? The fish. Yeah, so the fish, I'm not even thinking right now. That's not good. I'm going to go, I'm going to go this. No, I'm not. Yeah, I am going to go this way. I'm going to make him, that's his, yeah, I wasn't planning that. That's his tail. But yeah, it kind of, it's a different paper. It's drying very quickly in here today. Everyone be aware.
Is this a 300 paper?
Oh, shoot.
No, it's a 140.
140.
Is that your new brush?
Yeah, that's just my new brush. So if you want, you could start with a very simple sketch of the skyline. And I'm not going to follow this exactly because it's mountains. It's not a person's face or body. And then my second layer down here, you want them not to mirror each other. Even if it looks like it does in a photo, you want to make your design on the paper interesting as well. And then we've got kind of this coming down in the foreground. One thing about lines coming off, be sure you don't get a line that goes directly off the corner of your paper because that draws the viewer's eye out. So it's a very light drawing. This is my Super 4H, very light pencil, which I probably wouldn't even do, but it's just to show you, you can do that. And I've messed up my water already. So it's a nice sunny day. I'm going to start with a cobalt blue. Get a nice puddle here of it, which is hard for you. You do need a mixing area. I've got to figure out how to... And I want it fairly light because it's going to be in the background. So see how I'm picking up a little extra water just by touching that? I want it a little lighter down around the edge of the mountains. And I'm following, this edge of the brush is following my drawing along. And then I need to blend that in quickly because it is dry in here. And if I want, I can spray a little bit if I want to make some clouds. Look how quickly that's drying.
Maybe it's this paper.
It's also this paper too. Yep, exactly. So there's a cloud over that mountain. Okay. So kind of wait for that to dry. And when I'm working on a lot of watercolor, I'll have like 4 paintings going at the same time. So I can take this, set that aside as it's drying, be working on another one.
I wondered, yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely downtime in this.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. So
Unless you just want to go,
paint,
I'm fine.
wash the dishes,
Yeah.
check it. Or,
Exactly. I'm going to continue. So the next mountain is still going to be pretty blue, so I've got that cobalt still. I'm going to pick up a little greenish brown because it's already there, why not? You know. And I want it still fairly light. I'm going to test it kind of off to the side here to see my value difference between the sky and that. It is a little darker. I think I want it a little darker still. So I'm a little wet here, so I know that's going to bleed. What if I just kept my edge just a little bit away from it to keep that clean? Now I'm watching that top edge, keeping in mind that I see how I had to twist the brush here because I've got that line down there. So I'm trying with as few strokes as possible to make these mountains in a very smooth kind of area. So then I'll kind of soften that in. Now, what if I wanted it a little foggy in between these areas? I just grab some water on my brush and at this point follow that lower edge of mountain. Now I know this is going to take me a little longer to dry, isn't it? And I don't like this paper. Yeah.
Because of the dryingness?
It's almost a hard press, so it's hot press, I mean. But if I leave it, that could become interesting. Look at the little blossoms happening here. So, oh my gosh, that's not what I wanted. Well, that's what the watercolor has decided it wants to do. So I'm like, all right, I'll work with you here, which you kind of have to do. And I'm looking around, making sure, like, this is a little bit of an awkward line. Whatever that's going, it doesn't look natural. I might just continue it. So that's a shaded side of the mountain.
So you're not worrying about duplicating the shadows on
No.
there at all. And
No.
You're just
I'm using
going
this as a
with it.
takeoff
Got it.
and an idea of what
Yep.
mountainous is.
Got it.
And what's going to give you certain locations is certain shapes of mountains.
Right.
For instance, I don't think that is, but if this were Pisgah Peak, you would want that shape, and in your drawing, you would make a specific. It's volcanic, I think, right? Was Pisgah Peak? Because it's so conical. It's like,
Metamorphic, I believe.
is it?
I think so.
Okay. But it's really conical.
That's true.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
I don't know, I could be wrong too. That's all right. One time I had students down in Ecuador. I took them down and I'm talking about these big boulders everywhere, and I realized I was projecting my main history. I'm like, oh, so the glaciers came down. I'm like, wait a minute. I don't think the glaciers made it down to Ecuador. All right, so again, we're starting. This is giving me an idea of where I've been in color. I'm going to start picking up more green as we're coming forward. and maybe a hint of warmth. Did you see how I got my hint of warmth, right? This is my brown area. Look, this is just dribbling around, so I just picked up a little bit of that. And I've got quite a large area here. So I want to plan a little bit in here. I need good amount of paint because this is a larger area. Check the color. It's a little darker. I think that's going to work. I just turned it over because there seemed to be more paint on that corner of that brush. See how I'm leaving a little lightness there because I'm wondering how wet that is, but you can make it blend a little bit too. And now I'm thinking slopes of mountains, not just shapes, but also this mountain is coming down behind. Let's switch up the color a little bit because we don't want it a flat color. We want it to have a little more interest. Looks kind of brown, but that might work. More green. This is why it's nice to have a larger palette and you have some leftover paint there. It's like, hey, why not? I can use that. That looks odd. But now I have a totally different color in my brush, so see if I can just soften that a bit. Boy, hey, I'm doing two pictures at once. Got the fog in there. And if you wanted to add a little more fog down here in this valley, spray it down. Oops. No, I know, but it might work. I'll just lightly blot it. And don't blot it too much,
more
but
like tree shapes now too.
yeah, it's kind of like, is that fog? Is that tree shapes? Does it really matter?
Yeah.
Who knows? And then the next layer I'd come down a little bit stronger, of course. It's not quite ready, right? Should I go?
Sure.
Why not?
We don't have dishes to wash.
No? Yeah.
So you're doing the top one, not the bottom one, really,
Top.
of those two pictures.
It's become kind of a
It's okay.
a morphed.
Yeah.
Because this kind of happened like fog,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, okay, we'll kind of let it go if that's where it wants to go.
That's helpful, just not to be attached to.
And with watercolor,
Yeah,
you really,
That's really great.
I'm going to kind of follow that edge.
This is Zen teacher.
And then I just want to get some color in here. I don't want to lose that, but I know I'm going to lose that. And then, what if I add just little, what I'm looking at right now is up on the ridge.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to make them irregular. Because as you get closer, of course, you're going to have more detail too. I want to leave that. I like that. Oh. And then as this dries down in here, I could even add a little. Whoa. This is why it's always good to check first. Look how much brown I picked up on that one. Now I'm doing this while it's wet so that it will bleed and it will create some treeness down here in the foreground. It's a little unbalanced. I probably need something over on this side. It's a little too dark, so it would be good to have fresh paper towel. But just kind of blot a little bit there, maybe a little bit. See, look, each time I blot, I check it. I don't just keep blotting. I want some irregularity, as if there's light coming in from behind those trees. Cool. So, bluer, kind of lighter as you're coming forward. This fog is almost too strong, but I'll see how it dries.
When you said lighter as you're coming forward, don't we want to
No,
do
lighter as you
darker?
go back. Yeah, see.
Oh, okay.
I
was just
speak
making
in
sure.
partial sentences sometimes. I am so sorry.
That's
Lighter
okay.
in the background, and then as you come forward, you get more intensity, more contrast. This one almost looks like that's another mountain in the fog back there. And then, how are we doing? if you touch it with a clean finger, you can feel how wet it is. And then if you wanted, you know, you could have birds.
What paper is that?
I have no idea. Not a good paper. But then I want, okay, that's going to get too heavy. That's the wrong pen. So as I go back, you know, I can just have some birds flying off in the distance. Now, birds are basically thinking kind of a V shape with a little bit of extra weight in the center. And I usually go out, you know, there's usually like that. Some of them, but as they get further out, they're just little V's, or sometimes they're more up like that. And they read as birds, and people will look at it and go, ooh, look at all those birds. And you get them all flocking down in. I bring them down across. I just don't know. This is not dry yet. All right. You want to play with that for a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. Lay away.
So you did the birds with the pen.
I started with the tip of the brush
Okay.
for the ones that were closer, and then I used one of my pens after, which is sometimes why I have these. These pens are interesting because, and I'll talk about my rocks. If I come in with water before too long, they will actually kind of bleed, which is nice, and I use it a lot in my sketchbooks. Oh, natural sponges. If you have natural sponges too, and you want to do a texture, this might work really well, actually. Except there's not enough on there. I probably should wet my sponge first. Okay. And then pick up some paint. If you're not sure, test it somewhere. Let's bring a little ridge. I'm going to try to follow that natural ridge down there.
Oh, cool.
So sometimes you can stamp in some texture.
Yeah.
Do they sell natural sponges at the art?
I do not know. They should.
Yeah, they do. It's a pottery thing.
Oh, okay.
I've had this for
Clay tool.
ages. I've been collecting, and then at one point, oh, when I was working at the Sisters of Mercy School, somebody had, I have some giant sponges like this. Somebody had just left them there, and they were closing down the school, and they were just going to throw everything out. So picture, I mean, it's kind of working with rocks, like we kind of did last week, with a plastic wrap, which I had mentioned before, and you guys played with it last week. I did one today. Now, as I'm painting it, I drew it in quickly, the horizon. If you're doing water, your horizon has to be horizontal. Water always finds it level. If you take a photograph and the horizon is tilting slightly, straighten it out. You know, it really,
Go to iPhone correct.
yes, yeah, right? You just go to your edit. So I made sure that was straight across. I drew in, and I did this because I wanted to do the plastic wrap. I kind of took one of my pens and I drew in because I wanted it to bleed. It did not bleed on this paper. It normally bleeds on most papers that I use. Thank you, paper. And then I just threw in a lot of big washes of color. I started with my yellow ochre and some kind of reddish orange and a little blue in the background. Notice how I'm making it blue as it goes back. And then I put my plastic wrap on so it would kind of get some shapes. Not working out. I'm not that happy with it. But for demonstration's sake, now I kind of, if you wanted to finish it, looks like a sunny day, so I'm going to make it a sunny day. And I have color in my brush.
Do you want new water?
No, I think I'm going to use this one, thanks. I just noticed as I'm mixing that yellow that it came in kind of,
Someone have my demo paints?
it's right behind you.
Painting. Oh,
So I'm going to spray the background a little bit, and I'm just going to bring in some color here. Maybe it's sunset. Hey, why not? I don't trust what this is doing right here. Now notice as I drew that across, I may have picked up some of that blue paint, so I cleaned the brush again before kind of coming across again, because there's a good chance I got either some ink or blue in that. I might just leave that. It might work okay. And then for a little water, I need it to be different. This is an ultramarine blue. I need it to be a different blue. No, I know what it's doing. It's reflecting. Okay, I picked up some of my lemon yellow here, and as I came over here, I was considering the cerulean blue, but I know that will make a dull green, and I want it a little brighter because this lemon yellow is transparent, kind of, it's on your chart and you understand, but this is an opaque color. So I went to one of my transparent blues to add in if I want it very translucent. And I'm going to make the water kind of green. And I want it very light at the horizon. So I believe that is the tip that has more water. This has more pigment. I'm going to run the water tip near that. Oh, look how it picked that up. And then at the edge here, I'm going to kind of jiff it. That's an official word.
What it?
Jiff it. Because at the edge of rocks, you always have, you know, foam from the waves coming in. And this is not working because I'm not happy with this paper, as I said. But now I'm coming in second layer. So I can kind of, some branches of trees here. Let it come down in here. Trunks. I mean, it looks almost like I'm doing random because I do them rather quickly, but I'm saying, okay, this is some trunks. This is going to be like a little grassy area. Maybe a little grass. That's horrible. Break it up. A little more grass down in there. And that's going to be too wet for me to do much more with that. See how I was just about to put it down, but my brush was staying bent? That was showing me it was too dry. So I want to think rocks here, and I want to kind of follow a couple shady areas. Rocks. So I'm trying to think forms. This is where I'd probably go get one of my smaller square brushes. But it's just change the color. It's getting too much the same color. It's kind of greenish, but you know, some rocks kind of are.
They have moss on them.
Yeah, seaweed. Now it's getting drier, which is kind of nice. So I'll just, and by dragging this across, it's adding some texture, but also combining those green areas into this. So the eye is going, oh, there's green here, oh, there's yellow here, yellow here, yellow here. And it keeps the eye moving around. I've noticed my horizon has, this is a soft paper towel. I want a harsher paper towel. This is why I have different ones. Right on the edge of that horizon, hold it down, lift it. It should sharpen that, but it didn't because this is cheaper paper. It's amazing. You can do something like this, as you have found out, Andy, on one piece of paper and do the same thing on another, and the papers will make an amazing, amazing difference. There was something else I wanted to show. Oh, one of these. I kind of like this one. It's a painting, and I don't normally paint from paintings, but I thought that would be fun to work with. What do you think?
The same paper?
Is what?
Same paper?
No, not at all.
This is nice paper.
This is nice paper. No, I think that's the last piece of that one.
What are you looking for?
I'm looking for my brushes.
Oh.
Oh, here they are, under the paper towels. All right, now I'm thinking, if I wanted to do this, and I'm just using this as a takeoff spot, right? What do I need to do first?
Start with the lightest.
Right, so the sky. So what do we want overall? This is black and white, so that leaves us, I'm gonna put it down here. It leaves us with the ability to make this a color scheme, any color scheme we want. Do we want to do blues, purples, and greens? Do we want to do... That sounds good to me. I don't know.
Yeah, you haven't done any purples.
No purples.
Today.
No, I haven't. So I don't usually clean my palette, but I'm going to need a little bit of a mixing area for purples. That's all I need to do. All right. I always get a little nervous at a demonstration. All right, so we're going to kind of go purple. I kind of like that, but I want it a little more, yeah, a little more pinky. So if you're not finding the right color, think about your mixing. That's why practicing your mixings would help.
What
I want
purple's that? The,
Which-
sorry, the one you drew from.
this one
Yeah.
is a permanent violet, I believe.
Okay.
This is kind of a mix of, there's some alizarin crimson, and I think it's basically alizarin crimson, which tends to be fugitive sometimes. That looks dark to me. I want this background to be quite, I'm not going to draw, okay? I spray it off to the side, see what my spray is looking like. Now I'm going to do, and it's not going to be exactly this. So, let's try a little of this one. Notice I'm kind of mixing in the same area, and that's going to help tie my colors together somewhat so that they're not separate. And it's not going to be a pure color out of here. I'm always adjusting it slightly. If you can almost tell a beginning artist, because oftentimes, not always, but often, they have pure out of the tube colors, what we call out of the tube. And you want to kind of mix it up and make it more interesting. I'm thinking now some foggy background trees, and then the sharper ones I'll have to come back in when it dries. I'm looking at the sheen here to see where this is going. I'm using this finer spray because this one, if you look at the spray, I get the drops. This one has a finer mist. And I'm hoping that it will bleed nicely. I've got a general composition of a V coming down here. This one is right smack in the middle. I don't want mine right smack in the middle. I want it a little more off to the side. Too wet. You seeing that? So I'm gonna let it dry a little bit. My nifty little, oh, here it was. This was working pretty good. I like this one. What am I doing? I'm just touching the brush to the paper with paint on it, right? And I'm
That's all.
that's what you're doing.
Really?
I've darkened the color a little bit because this is kind of the shape of the tip of the tree. So I'm like, okay, just go with it. A little darker as we come down through. This looks a little too faded back there. Okay, step back. This area looks a little too regular. These marks here, but I'm still just throwing in some background trees. And I know I'm getting down into a something. Oh, an area where there's some fog back there. So I'll probably leave this for a little bit if I had time. I'm going to wet the path area that I want. and some mist. So I'm looking for some of this mistiness in here and hope that it works. Ooh, that's kind of interesting. I want that very light. So now I have like a nice little zigzag kind of design there that will be more or less the path area. I kind of like that
Why
swirl.
isn't it taking up over there?
It's dry.
Oh.
This is very wet and this is
Oh.
dry because and that gives variety in your painting without you working a lot at it. And sometimes you want that.
Yeah.
Look.
Yeah.
I've got some really wet areas here. All right, but we're going in. Ah! While I'm cleaning my brush, I'm thinking, what other color am I going to add into this? I think this. Let's try it with this. Notice I don't mix it right in the middle. I kind of pull it off to the side. So I have some over here that's grayer, and this is kind of a mix in here. So I have variety. I need more paint. And this is where you start learning.
Why do you need more paint?
I need
Want it
enough paint
darker?
to really get into this quickly. Okay, so some of this is going to bleed. Remember we practiced our trees. Want a little more brown. It's tricky sometimes when you're doing a demo because I have a limited amount of time. Normally I would have been more patient with this.
It's okay.
It's okay.
So yeah.
It's still too wet in here.
I'm learning. Watching.
See, I'm embracing my hand and I'm trying to stay way up on the tip top of my brush.
Watching.
Interesting. I've never started with purple.
Okay, edge of the path. I want to think this is coming down through. I want it to getting deeper now. Woohoo! All right, let's go for it. Whatever. Now see how that's bleeding down there? I'm thinking ahead. See in that little photo of the painting? I'm going to do something with that in a little bit. This is kind of large areas of color. I want a little variety in there. I don't want just green and blue. And this swooshes down into this. Now this looks funny right now, but I've got a plan. Believe it or not. Boy, that is really strong. See, I got some green in there. You know how to clean that out after? I'll show you. Remind me, because I'll show you how to clean that after. There are artists online, and they'll do a demo like this online, and go like, all right, first instant message from me, can buy this for $500.
Oh, man.
I know, I was like, wait, what a minute. So to clean out your paint, you dampen your brush, a clean, damp brush. So now it's a sponge. It's not filled with water or paint. It's a damp brush. And you can just twist and lift a lot of that right out of your contaminated. And I need something down here. What has he got going on down here?
I love that bleeding.
Dark.
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
So now, I'm going to start with this one. Whoops. Oh, okay. You know, so sometimes you think you've made a mistake, and sometimes it will be all right. This is very interesting. But see, not being afraid of getting some paint out there would help. Just want a couple more darks up in here, because I want to come back with details when it's dry enough. And I want the most color and highest contrast in the areas where I'm going to eventually bring in some details. Under the trunks of the trees, there's also some shadows coming out from the wood. I am not being super definitive right now. I'm just generally having fun with this. Generally. You know, see what I did there? I knew I had some paint on there, so I kind of brought it down in here. And then you just kind of keep going back and forth until you get more of what you want. Whoops, that was not a good one. Now I'm in trouble because that, luckily I have a decent paper here it will lift somewhat. So this is my little path going back.
Are you bothered by the water lines up in the pink area?
This,
Yeah.
no, that's some, you know how like in the winter and snow starts coming down, the clouds and the snow kind of a like one wash thing coming down. That's what that is.
It was planned that way.
It was planned that way. I knew what I was doing. It does a little bit. I wonder if we could do anything with that. Clean brush, as clean as possible. Soften this edge, you mean right here? Is that the one you...
I'm not saying it needed
You could,
it. I
no,
just didn't know.
you
Here's
could
some
work
clean
it a
water.
little bit, and you could blot it, and lift it a little bit.
I love that over here.
Yeah, the colors and things in it. I'm not sure what's happening here. I'm not sure if it matters.
What kind of paper did you use?
This was my Arsh.
Is that how you say it, Arsh?
Arsh. We used to say Darsh.
Arches.
Aquarelle Darsh, of Darsh. Darsh is the company. See how down here? Papier Darsh.
Oh, that's
Paper
right.
of Arsh. Arsh is
Oh,
paper.
that's where the D is coming in.
Yeah. So I used to call it Darsh forever, but it's now they say basically Arsh. So this, and then I think I'll come back over with a little more details. It's not going to look like this. That's gone. I'm already
That's okay.
past
That's
that,
good.
right? So yeah, sometimes that's fun to play with. Cool. Oh, missed a whole bunch of the edges there.
Mystical.
Well, and we said the purple, which kind of fun. I should make sure I've got a little tie down
Don't
here.
say, no, just don't say that.
So this water is getting a little, because even after I rinse here and I go to pick up here, it's beginning to color my fresh water. So oftentimes what I'll do is I'll just change this and make that my fresh. By holding my brush back very far too, it loosens up what I'm doing.
I noticed
I
you're
am.
holding it.
I'm not really
different,
tight.
yeah.
I'm not writing. It's. Well, I thought there was paint on that. There we go. See, I'm checking. Isn't there paint on that brush? See, I could put color down there, but that's going to pull the eye down there, and I don't want that. I think I want some more little color down in this area, just to bring that purple and down in there. And it might look like those red branches in the winter, or some
Red light.
sort of lichen or so. Yeah, we can always make something up. But look how it helps to balance the painting a little better. All right, so I'm gonna
Wow,
step away from the painting and then come back in for.
nice.
You can really see how you're so much looser than most of us.
Mine is just so tight, and
I
Well,
guess handling the brush differently.
handling it differently, and I think a lot, that's why I kind of show it. Sometimes I'm way up like this. And then I'm not totally responsible. You know? Because I've just barely had it.
Yeah.
Have you read Liz Gilbert's book, Big Magic,
Yes.
Yeah.
right? And she talks about that it's creative spirit kind of flowing through her. She says, I'm here, I'm doing the work. If you don't show up, it's not all my fault.
Perfect.
It is. This morning when I was driving in, I passed one of those sheer rock walls,
Oh, yeah.
and it was just beautiful dark gray, and there was this yellow bursting of color tree in front of it. And I thought, how do you do that? It's such a dark background. It's not a light background, it's dark. So what's your advice?
So behind this bright tree, that's
Yeah.
you're doing negative painting in that
Oh, okay.
sense. So you lay in some of those bright leaves and stuff like that, wait for it to dry, and then you have to paint around.
Oh.
But not all of them. You don't want them spots. You want it, some areas bunches, some areas detailed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Does that help? Yeah? Nice. Okay, this looks a little...
How did I get what? I find birds mine look too
Oh,
fast.
well,
I'm just talking, go ahead, keep painting, because I'm noticing some of the areas are a little drier, that I don't want sharp details. I want to add in a little, somewhat fading and blurring, but not too much. It's always that balance. Trees that are up in mountains too, or on seaside cliffs, they struggle to survive, and branches have fallen off or gotten torn off or different things. So allow that irregularity to happen in a number of your trees. Very wet right now. You can see how this paper, because it's more rag, is holding on to the moisture, and you can see the bubbling.
Yeah.
So that's why, when I let it dry, you need to keep it attached, because it will flatten back out. I didn't like that shape right there. Dryish brush, so it's splitting. I can add some texture in here.
Mm-hmm.
Getting out of your comfort zone.
It's always blues and greens and yellows.
Not too much of a good thing. I don't know what they are.
It's effective though.
Yeah, right. And just because, if it's a landscape, and you think, why are those red flowers there in the middle of the winter? Well, it happens. But you don't have to explain it either. It's just, you're also making the painting work as a painting in composition and all the other aspects.
And your narrative is different than the viewer's narrative.
Yes. And that's leaving enough unsaid in your painting so a viewer can come and bring some of their own narrative into it. If you finish it perfectly, then it's like a photograph, and like, why would you do that? So this has got to dry before I add in some of those details. It's still way too wet. Kind of fun though.
See, there was an avalanche, and the people got covered, and then spring came, and all the blood was dripping
She's back on the
down
mummies again.
their mountain.
I kept thinking about them. Oh, I shouldn't have told them the story about the mummies. But it just amazes me that people would go like, hey,
Let's grind up humans.
let's grind up humans and make paint out of it. Yeah, let's.
Well, you're using your resources. I mean, they didn't have anything else, you know?
Well, you know,
From dust
there
to
was a
dust?
certain time, there were so many mummies, they would burn them as fire fuel.
Wow.
You've heard about that, right?
So
Yeah.
many mummies.
Because the resins that they used to preserve them would just make fire really nice.
You'd be surprised to know what happened to them.
I mean,
You know, because they were supposed to be there forever for the afterlife and the whole deal.
And I got, okay.
and it tells your people you need help.
I'll, yeah, right.
Not happened to me yet.
I had a Samsung that did that. I was like, okay. I know.
Well, thank you. I just get them off.
Okay, and I'm just kind of playing because I don't have an image that I'm working off from, but I've got some water in the background. It's kind of like, I don't know, a lake, and it's coming down through a stream maybe or somewhere. And you've got to study, there'll be foam. Say there's a little waterfall here. So there'll be foam underneath. And you want to leave a lot of white, sharp, clean white. This is the negative space areas between the foam. And then let's say we had some ripples after that. So I'm thinking, you know how the ripples are going around where the foam is coming down. And then it comes down into like another. Again, you could, this is tiny, but I'm covering up some of the other areas that I don't want that water to fall on because I want this nice and sharp. Now this is just the water without it being in a setting. I mean, it would be within rocks or something. Bad.
And if there was sand, would that just be the color difference?
Basically, I was going to put in some rocks here, like. So if this is kind of near where the waterfall is, if it's a tiny, you know, just one of those little tiny, it's not a big waterfall.
I'm giving up.
Now I have to come around where that foam and stuff is coming down to the shadow. This is shadow in a rock.
I think it should have stopped on you a while ago. Maybe I'll stop now.
Angular rocks. If there was sand off over here.
It's, yeah, well, you know, if I like someone.
I'm just making this up as I go. I have no idea what I'm doing.
love these colors together.
Your knowledge of color is so, the knowledge of color
I
is
like,
so critical.
yeah, it really is. I do
Learn the materials.
learn the materials, learn color. I have some color YouTube video. I go over like how do you paint. It's in pastel, but it can still apply to whatever. Color mixes, like here's a painting in analogous colors. Here's one in complementary colors. Okay, so if these are rocks, they've got little cracks and stuff in them, and I want to get off from that.
Well, I should have stopped, but anyway, it's fine. Time to stop.
Ooh, kind of like that actually. Oops.
I hope you're gonna gonna send that on the video, because I missed your little demonstration.
I did. I almost didn't.
Okay.
Then I have it. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Oh, man. That's cool.
I mean, and that's not, but for water, you need to leave the white. The foam needs to stay white, so it's very contrasty. Is that a word, contrasty?
Yeah.
Right? So go down to Botanical Garden and sit there and watch the water and where it's light and where it's dark and where it's middle tones, and when the rocks are shining through. The rocks under the water look different than the rocks that are dry.
Yeah.
And you can sit there for hours. That's what Leonardo da Vinci would sit and watch for hours. You know, like he did it with water, and he always little drawings of how water came down. But he also did it with birds, so that he could tell a bird's wings went like this, and not just flap, flap, flap. Especially humming. And I'm like, without a camera, without slow mo, this man could see these things and put them together.
This is engineering, this.
Yeah,
I'm always, but